Watching the special coverage of the G20 summit that's taking place in Johannesburg. Today is day 2, and well, it was a very power-packed day 1 that we saw, which saw the leaders' declaration as well. But the third session and the final session is still to go, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be making his submission as well, his intervention as well, and this covers some vital subjects as well. To talk about that and a lot more, we have our guests with us. We have Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, senior diplomat, former senior diplomat, as well as Professor Rajan Kumar of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. If I could come to you, Ambassador, and ask you about what is really of critical importance to India as far as this third session is concerned, which is a lot about ensuring that the kind of dividends that we get from technology that keep flowing to perhaps the global south, to these countries that are in critical need of it.
I think this is one of the critical sectors which looks at the future and something which is not very clear. India took the lead during its presidency of the G20 to lay out several paths on AI, on technology for development, and including the use of DPI and things like that. I think these have been carried forward by Brazil and South Africa. The point remains, how can we make sure that technology contributes to a just transition and does not become a handmaiden of increasing exploitation or inequality globally? That is why India is a co-chair of the AI summit, which it will again convene next year. And I think India is actively marketing the DPI substack to developing country partners who may be desirous of obtaining it. Technology is the new oil, and therefore, in order to keep it just and equally available to all, will ensure some modicum of equality as the world goes ahead. We cannot let technology become the new exploit.
Again, I apologize for interrupting Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, because we have now images coming on our screen of the IBSA meet, the 6th IBSA meet, the India, Brazil, South Africa formulation that we have of these three nations, again emerging economies from three different continents. These leaders have taken opportunities such as these to come together as well, to come to a collective modicum of understanding amongst themselves and action as well, as to how they want to shape not only the destinies of their own countries, but shape the destiny of the world together as well. So you see those images there as well. Amritpal Singh is with us as well on the ground in Johannesburg. Amrit, what can you tell us about what took place in this particular meeting that Prime Minister Modi had with the leaders of Brazil and South Africa?
You see, this was a much anticipated meeting. Remember, the last IBSA summit meeting happened at least 11 years ago. So it's been quite a while. And the questions were being raised that, is this really a partnership? Do interests coincide? Does geographical distance play a great role? Do their interests coincide? Can they really, collaborate on meaningful issues? But though the foreign ministers, etc., have been speaking to each other, but as I said, it's been over a decade since the leaders really met. But the very fact that they chose to meet, that reiterates the commitment to the development agenda and to the agenda of the global south, because all three countries are essentially the leading countries of the global south from their respective continents, and their interests coincide. The questions were being asked on whether geographical distance was contributing to IBSA being a non-starter or IBSA not holding much promise. But I think when the leaders today met, the signaling is that they want to stay committed to the development agenda. They want to take coordinated opinionated positions on, the way at multilateral fora, especially coming to issues on the finance track, on reform of multilateral institutions, including those of multilateral banks, the whole debt vulnerability question, and being, leaders, being voices, strong voices of the global South and their concerns, their interests in their particular continents and representing that. So I think this meeting was significant, especially on the sidelines of G20, and it must be a signaling to, the signal must have gone to the leaders of the developed world who are here. President Keir Starmer, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, though, left late last night. He had to go back to the United Kingdom, but Emmanuel Macron is here. Other leaders of the West are here. So it clearly was a signal that the developing, the emerging economies, or what is referred to as the global South, their resolve to further the interests of their people remains, they remain steadfast, and that needs to be factored into the global governance architecture and the global debate. Gautam.
Yes, and the message to work things out, or ways to work things out with Donald Trump too, perhaps, because already we see the Americans not participating in this particular G20 summit. We've had Donald Trump targeting Brazil as well over Jair Bolsonaro, who's just been arrested really from detention within his home. So that is another thing that might tick Donald Trump off. And India has been, of course, all these three countries have been at the receiving end of Donald Trump's tariff, the kind of way that he's used tariffs as well to target certain countries. Do you think that is something that these leaders would have taken up as well?
I'm sure this would have figured in the discussions, though we are expecting a readout of what really transpired in that meeting. But my sense is that, yes, this could have figured in the meeting between the three leaders, because, Trump's tariff diplomacy or tariff coercion diplomacy that he's pursuing has had issues, of course, with President Lula, things sometimes getting acrimonious, but he chose not to come to South Africa. So this is something that concerns them, and they would have looked at that how alternative trade linkages, especially between the global South on areas that they complement each other, need to be strengthened, so that there are alternative global supply chains which do not get affected or do not throw things in a jeopardy if some countries want to pursue a certain unilateralism when it comes to trade diplomacy, or want to use trade as a coercive measure against other countries and also blocs. So I think this would have figured between the three leaders this morning.
Right. Amrit, just stay with us. Let me bring in Ambassador Gurjeet Singh. I'm afraid this is the second time that I've had to interrupt you, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, but could you tell us about this partnership as well, your perspective on it? IPSA, Amrit pointed out that a long time had passed since they had last met, and the circumstances that they're meeting under in geopolitics perhaps even further necessitated this meeting, and we are waiting to hear what the outcomes might be, and in the meantime speculating on what might have actually happened.
Thank you. So I think IPSA is now about 25 years old. And by raising it to a summit level, originally it was only at the foreign ministers level. And the foreign ministers track has been meeting, even in 2023 they met. But when President Lula raised it to a summit level, though the meetings have not been so regular, as a result, we tend to see the gaps. Whereas on agenda, there are actually continuity. So I would have been happier if IPSA had been left at the level of foreign ministers with occasional summits like we see today, rather than leave the entire IPSA to the leaders level. Having said that, IPSA lost some ground because when BRICS was expanded to include South Africa in 2010, Brazil and South Africa started taking BRICS more seriously than IPSA. And that was a sad part because IPSA was the three continent, three democracy initiative in which China and Russia actually did not fit. Even now, with the haphazard expansion of BRICS, has lost its some focus and positioned it against the United States sometimes. I think the revival of the IPSA Leaders Forum is very important to lend support to the G20 initiatives in favor of the Global South. We cannot deny that each of us faces headwinds. India has problem with the United States. Brazil has problem with the United States, but is also the current chair of COP30, which despite extra time is not able to reach a decision. And you cannot blame the Americans for that lack of a decision. And South Africa has its own problem with the United States. So we have to stand up for the Global South. I have been an advocate that IPSA should not only be a policy making body, it should actually set up a bigger IPSA fund than what is there now and support SDG implementation in the Global South with contributions by three countries, seeking contributions from others, but keeping decision making to IPSA itself. That I think will make a real difference to the languishing SDG agenda in the Global South, and it will be like a self-help group of the Global South. This picture is extremely evocative and important. I think this will be one of the significant reminders of how the G20 in Johannesburg succeeded.
And Professor Rajkumar, if I could get your views as well on this long pending IPSA meeting which is finally taking place under circumstances which have altered since the last time, it was more than a decade ago, 11 years ago, that the leaders met. It's not just about how America has changed global geopolitics to a large extent, but also other factors as well. There are BRICS partners too, who perhaps are in a way different from what these three nations are.
Yes, very important. I agree with Ambassador, sir. Yes, IPSA is important for India for a number of reasons. Let me tell you. Why is it important? First, because we haven't explored the possibility of countries of the Global South coming together. Countries of Global South, I mean democracies of the Global South coming together. So if you talk of IPSA, India, Brazil, South Africa, they are democracies. You do not have many organizations where democracy and political agendas are also important. So from that perspective, I think it can expand. It requires more funding. It requires institutionalization. All of that is true. And second, IPSA is also important for India for other reasons. Let me tell you. When it comes to BRICS summit, many times China would try to hijack the agenda, and Russia will not be taking a position against China because of its dependence on China for a number of reasons. In that context, there are instances I've seen when IPSA countries, on the issue of expansion of BRICS, for instance, on the issue of energy, on the issue of the Ukraine, etc. They have an agreement. They have certain differences with Russia and China. It's very subtle. It's very it's not articulated in strong terms. But yes, even with Russia and China, we have some issues, be it on the issue of Ukraine or on the issue of Gaza, etc. Democracies, because these countries are democracies of the Global South, so they have certain nuanced opinion on issue of sovereignty, on the issue of the way kind of relationship that we should have with the West, the kind of rhetoric which China would like to push against the United States. IPSA countries will not agree to that for that matter. So for that reason, I think IPSA is important. It provides a forum for the democracies of the Global South to work together within BRICS, but also not taking BRICS to become an organization which is anti-Western organization. We say that we are non-Western organization in the BRICS. We are not. BRICS is not an anti-Western organization. That we can say essentially because IPSA countries have certain positions which are different from Russia and China. So from that perspective, I think IPSA is important.
Definitely. And Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, if these nations were to take their partnership forward in the direction that you're suggesting, do you feel that it would also be okay with the BRICS formulation itself, because they might feel that the efforts that should be channeled for taking the BRICS agenda forward are being made in another direction.
Is right. The BRICS agenda is different from the IPSA agenda. And I think the fact that the leaders meet today is a realization that now we understand that among all three. China, as he rightly said, tries to dominate the BRICS agenda. And when you have so many new countries added, all of whose commitment, for instance, to the new development bank is uncertain, it does not give the commonality of development approach to the BRICS now that the BRICS earlier had. Therefore, to restore the normalcy of BRICS and to bring the democratic credentials back which IPSA originally championed, I think a revival of the IPSA spirit, regular meetings at the level of foreign ministers and designated Sherpas to take the agenda forward will give IPSA the teeth to keep the G20 Global South spirit flying.
And especially you have Brazil hosting the COP30, and a consensus is still to emerge as to how that agenda has to be taken forward in terms of ensuring that whatever the world does is sustainable. The US is not participating there. Do you think a powerful message could be sent out there as well by the IPSA nations coming together, Professor Rajan Kumar?
Yeah, without any doubt. If you see the, I was reading the newspaper report on the COP30, the meeting which is taking place, and this is being considered important for a number of reasons. First is that they're working on something even in the absence of the United States, and the summit meeting is taking place in Brazil, a country of the global South. So that's very important. But also on the specific issue, they are saying that they have made some progress on the issue of climate financing. The details are not yet clear. I haven't seen the details in the report, but they are saying that some kind of agreement some kind of consensus has been created. They are also saying that on the carbon border arrangement, etc., in which European Union puts more tariff on the carbon on the industries, on the products which consume, which has more carbon this emission. So that there is some agreement on the tariff issue also, and it seems that the European countries were not in position to push in the absence of the United States to to support the issue of tariff, which they do it in the name of what you call carbon emission, and especially on the products coming from the developing countries. So there has been some progress. There has been, but important thing is that the COP30 they agreed on that the concerns of the developing countries are important, and also as you pointed out in the program earlier, that these countries, developing countries, need $5 to $6 trillion for transitioning to the carbon emission, low carbon emission, this what you call energy. And for that, unless until the Western countries provide technology, unless until they provide some kind of financing, these countries will not be in position to transition to a carbon-free economy. So those are the issues that have been discussed, and I think they're important from Global South perspective. And also in the BRICS, if you see, this issue has been raised in this what you call G20 meeting also on the issue of climate financing. There is some kind of understanding, some kind of consensus is being built. Also on the issue of food and energy, which are very important for this Global South country. Again, there is some kind of consensus. So I think some consensus is broadly emerging that how do we work without United States on very important agendas of climate change.
Yes, and these nations are a vital part of figuring that particular puzzle out, and despite the United States non-cooperation as well, as I should say, not just lack of participation. And Amrit, if I could again come to you, it's not just about us sending a message to the Oval Office or the White House for that matter. The coming together of these IPSA nations, what sort of a message does it send to the continents that they come from, to Asia, to Africa, to Latin America?
Are you saying that
yes.
What message is being sent to the US?
Just no, to their respective continents themselves, Amrit.
Okay. Yes, as I said, the three countries are very, very important countries. In fact, leading forces of their own continent, representing the global South. India and from the Asian continent, from the Latin American continent, Brazil, and from the African continent, South Africa. They are important players in their own continent, but they are important leaders of the global South. So I think they're coming together represents or symbolize, signals that they are committed to the agenda of the global South. They're putting their political weight behind the agenda of the global South, and to the rest of the world, especially the Western world or the developed world, that these countries remain, they are a united force to deal with. Also, if I may add, though you didn't ask me this, but if I may add, the US would also be closely watching because, if these countries individually may not be very strong economies like, say, China, that the United States can't push their coercive tariff diplomacy as he's done with the rest of them, that they're coming together is a signal. So I think the US would be closely watching what transpired at this meeting. But I think that wasn't the purpose of the meeting. The purpose was to stay committed to the development agenda, to taking coordinated positions on issues related to shared concerns, including climate combat financing, the restructuring of multilateral banks, the way debts are given, the whole debt vulnerability question, and how the reform of the global financing architecture.
Right. And what sort of inferences do you think China would be drawing from this meeting?
Okay, China would be, China doesn't feel in that sense very threatened by these countries coming together. But as both Ambassador and Professor Kumar were saying, that, China has its own interests in BRICS. Be on the development bank, which the interests of India and China do not coincide. So this was this forum. The BRICS had cast its shadow on the IPSA, saying that is there really a need for IPSA? But the way the whole Chinese approach to collaboration is very different from how the other countries of the global South look at. Look at what the Prime Minister's proposals related to, say, Africa were yesterday. Skill training. China is a very big development partner of Africa, but the Africans that I've spoken to here over the past 3 days say that they take the money. China is deep into development. They also understand it's got deeper pockets than, say, a country, say, compared to India, and they're using that money. They're not saying it's an either-or relationship. They will continue their relationship with China, but they also understand the very difference of approach towards partnership. So I think at IPSA also, the revival of IPSA, or by the meeting of the three leaders today, the Chinese would be watching as to will that affect or influence how the rest of the global South looks at the partnership with China. Though I don't think China faces an immediate direct threat from IPSA really as of now.
Right. And again, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, to the wider global South as well, this coming together would be a harbinger of better progress to come in the coming days, where their own agenda is concerned, and some hope that the ball will not be dropped because certain other nations which will take over the G20 presidency from here on are not that keen on it.
I think there are three challenges. The first, as you said, is the United States, because they are going to be the next chair. Had they not been the next chair, perhaps we would not have been discussing so much about the challenge to Global South, because most other G20 members subscribe to the agenda of the Global South as embedded in G20 declarations since the Indian presidency in 2023. It is the United States which has totally rejected the agenda and wants to talk about other things rather than SDGs, climate finance, and trade on equitable terms, which is the threat. But at the same time, though China plays a central role in trying to support the G20 and gives its own twist to how the globe should progress, we should not forget that the values of China are different from the values of India and Brazil and South Africa for that matter. So this democracy imperative we must look at, and we cannot ignore the challenge of China to the global south, which is whose economic partnership is not balanced, is more exploitative, and yet it provides financing when the continent needs more financing. And finally, you come to the European Union, the other big pole. They are also big advocates of development, but want to give it a political agenda within the global south. And now that their problem with Russia are more severe, they keep bringing that in. And that is not something the global south wants to get involved in. So therefore, the way forward with the European Union is for them to work with India on a trilateral basis in Africa, particularly also in ASEAN countries, to see how the development agenda can be fulfilled. And if we can do that, I think we would have done a good service to the global south within the G20 context.
Certainly. And let's also come to the issue of Ukraine, which was something that the West wanted to take up while there in Johannesburg. But Amrit, where these three leaders in these three countries are concerned of the IPSA, do you feel that they would have also been on one page in the context of Ukraine? Because we do have a fact that Vladimir Putin has not travelled to Johannesburg for the G20 summit, but he'll be travelling to Delhi very soon as well for a bilateral meeting, the annual bilateral meeting that takes place between India and Russia.
I think the issue of Ukraine could have come up in this meeting because they are, as I said, the three leaders of three very significant countries of.
Okay, we seem to be having a bit of a problem with that link with Amritpal Singh. We'll try and reconnect some network issues there. But let me again go to Ambassador Gurjeet Singh on that. Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, what do you feel about the issue of Ukraine where IPSA is concerned? You did mention that these nations will not want to get too caught up with that particular issue, but still it does remain one of global concern. One is an issue which is added to a lot of misery where the cost of living is concerned in the world, and it needs to be resolved as soon as possible.
Yes, indeed. India has taken a clear position on the Ukraine crisis. South Africa president had led an African delegation to Ukraine and to Russia. And Brazil has also taken a position on that under President Lula. So basically, I think if the Trump administration pulls off this deal, then I think IPSA countries would be satisfied that the war would come to an end, and this whole issue of sanctions on gasoline and petroleum products or grain or other matters with Russia would cease. However, if you looked at the European members yesterday, I think they spent more time reading the 28 points of Trump rather than the G20 declaration, because they had been kept out of the Trump plan for solving the Ukraine crisis. So today Europe is seeking to use the G20 formulation to get back into the Ukraine game from which the Americans have excluded them. Now it is to be seen whether Ukraine would be left as Europe's baby to resolve with the Americans taking the cherries, or what would Europe do to assert itself as a pole. Therefore, since the G20 declaration talks about peace in Ukraine, besides Palestine and DRC and Sudan, I think if there is a deal, though it is outside the G20 framework and the US is not participating, the Russian president is not there, And this time, Ukraine is not invited. So we have sort of shelved the Ukraine issue from this G20. I think it will be good for all of us, and we will all be supportive of it.
Right. And on that note, I believe I'm supposed to be thanking you for joining us, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh. That was the time that you had with us. Thank you so much once again for being with us on day 2 as well. And Professor Rajan Kumar is still with us. Professor Rajan Kumar, what do you have to say about this vital issue? This is war that's gone on for way too long. Nobody anticipated for over 4 years it will drag on, and it remains a concern for every country in the world for the reasons that were stated. The cost of living has gone up significantly after this conflict, perhaps even more than when we had COVID. So clearly that the IPSA formulation would have a position on it as well, and each country has had that very publicly out there as well. But it seems that the way a solution is being sought does not agree with Europe.
Absolutely. The way IPSA countries, they have taken position on the issue of Ukraine, that is very interesting. And let me tell you that India took a lead in that. India took a lead by saying that India first refused to condemn Russian action. Also, India refused to join the Western sanctions on Russia, saying that any sanction decision should not be taken by unilaterally or by a small number of countries. India will only follow sanctions if it is taken at the level of United Nations, and India's position was completely justified. Similarly, once India took that position, let me tell you, all the countries of the global South, most of the countries, I'll say, they started taking this position. So South Africa didn't join the regime of sanction. Brazil, initially it was playing two sides, but Brazil later decided to follow and say that no, Brazil will not join the sanction. So on the issue of Ukraine, this IPSA says very subtly that sovereignty of a country should be respected, and that is part of the declaration of G20 also. What it means is that in a very subtle way, India and all these countries, G20 countries, are trying to say to Russia that what happened in Ukraine, where Ukrainian sovereignty was encroached, that is something that should not happen. But the name has not been taken. The language is very kind of moderate language. It's not a very hard language. So that's how these countries take position. So these countries, IPSA will not criticize this Russia, let me tell you, and for very valid reasons. IPSA at the same time says that sovereignty of countries should be respected. Even if you see the declaration of the G20, where Ukraine has been mentioned in a context where it says that sovereignty of each country is important and no other country should try to change the border or try to encroach upon the sovereignty of other country. But so far as the real issue of playing some role as a negotiator or playing some role as pushing Russia or United States or the European countries, I do not think that IPSA countries would be taking a very proactive position on the issue of Ukraine, because they know that they have very rigid positions. United States is US has come up with the peace deal, which essentially, Trump's peace deal, 28 planned peace deal, essentially favors Russia. It has taken almost all the maximalist position of Russia, which European countries are not happy about. And as a consequence, European countries are meeting in Johannesburg, the same place where the G20 meeting is taking place. And they are likely to come up with two things. One is that with a new kind of fresh proposal, then they would also like to persuade Trump to kind of to agree for a new proposal where the security of Ukraine would be guaranteed, and Ukraine will have right to decide its membership either to the European Union or to the NATO. So these are the things which are being worked out, but the borderlines exist between the two sides. One on the west, second on the Russia, and third you have the countries of the global south. And these three positions are divergent. They don't converge, let me tell you. Yes, the countries of the global south are largely with this on the issue of condemning. They are saying no, will not condemn, but at the same time they're also against sanctions. But at the same time, they're not happy with the fact that a sovereignty of a country is being encroached by other countries. So that's the position of IPSA.
All right, a very delicate balance then to be maintained. Let me at this point also bring in our another expert guest. We have Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigna joining us, former senior diplomat. we were talking about the meeting that the IPSA leaders have just had a short while ago in Johannesburg, a long pending meeting after a gap of 11 years. And it sends out a signal on multiple issues to the entire world, not just to Washington DC or to Beijing or to Moscow, but all corners of the world really. Anil Kumar Thugunath, we're still waiting to hear as to what was discussed. We don't have a readout from that as yet. But clearly, since this meeting had been long pending, there is a lot that the leaders perhaps might have taken up.
Well, I'm quite sure that most of the issues that have been discussed in the G20 per se have also been discussed here. But this is a concert of the three democracies. And if you come to think of it, all the three countries, India, Brazil, and South Africa, have really been singled out by President Trump for his special affection. And so, therefore, that would have been the major concern, exactly how to neutralize that impact in a joint manner. And I know, as Professor was mentioning, it is also, all those points are very, very valid. But I think that IPSA is essentially trying to look for better projects in terms of the fund that has been created, whether to expand it. And I think those are the things, issues that will be taken. Major challenges have already been talked about within the G20. One thing by this G20 summit that clarified very clearly that USA was declared as absent. And so therefore, this could not have any impact on the consensus-based declaration that is often. And the fact that most of the Western countries, Argentina tried to a little bit do something, but then we saw that most of the Western countries went along with it. So that also shows that there is a disconcert between in the transatlantic system as well. And therefore, we'll have to see how it eventually plays out. But I'm quite sure that it's good. I'm happy that IPSA summit level has happened after a long time. But it is an important instrument. Somehow what happens is it got absorbed into BRICS also, and in some other organizations where we've been meeting. But time has come that the three countries do take proactive measures. They have done earlier, if you remember, in Iraq, in Syria, and different places, these countries had taken, our UN representatives had traveled to try to create some kind of an approachment there. So they can play a better role in different, and many countries in the three continents look up to all the three countries, whether it is South Africa, India, or Brazil.
Right. Now, our previous guest did mention the fact that ever since the BRICS had come to being, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh was of the opinion that IPSA sort of kind of lost its way. So once these leaders have come together after such a long break, do you feel that they would have felt a need at least, I don't know if they answer to that need as well, an expectation, a need that they come up with something which would announce to the world that IPSA remains relevant and it can get things done?
You know, every institution has its relevance, and that's the reason it has been founded. Now, as I said, that there are these three democracies out of the earlier five BRICS. I mean, Russia is a democracy, but currently engaged in this long war with Ukraine, and that is a very major challenge for them as well, to continue to tell the world that yes, they still follow the UN Charter and the policies. South Africa itself has its own issues. At the same time, China, we know that China is trying to create a very new kind of a world order. I mean, it has come up with this global security initiative, global developmental initiative, global cultural initiative, and as well the global governance initiative. So that's where I think that these countries can pause, can sit back, and look at how things are moving. Are they really going to be impactful for the developing world? And they are all independent-minded three countries and democracies on top of it. So I think that that's why the relevance of this has been once again re-emphasized by this summit.
Right. Let's also talk about the issue of Gaza. We see how the UNSC has now endorsed the Trump plan, which has been in a way put into effect already, and it's come sort of retrospectively to the UN Security Council. Professor Rajan Kumar, do you feel that that is a formulation or a solution that could be endorsed by the IPSA nations as well?
I think so, because out of 15, the voting that took place in the United Nations Security Council, out of 15 Security Council votes, 5 permanent and 10 temporary members. Out of that, 13 voted in favor and 2 abstained. Russia and China, they abstained, and also they didn't oppose it; they abstained. So what does it mean?
Yeah,
So
they
that
did
is
not veto it.
they didn't veto it. They abstained from the voting, which means essentially they are saying that you can go ahead with the plan. We don't agree. We have certain issues. So what essentially it means that most of the countries of the global south will also support that kind of resolution, because it's a largely United Nations Security Council resolution. And also it talks about the important thing is that the ceasefire will continue. The important thing is a stabilization force and the future development which will take place in Gaza, and the issue of recognition of Gaza. How will that come? We don't really know. But that is an important development, and I can tell you that most of the IPSA countries, India, Brazil, South Africa, they would favor this kind of position, because they want peace in Gaza. They want Palestine. Their position is very clear. One of the reasons why Trump is not coming to South Africa, because South Africa took a very strong position in support of Palestine, and US was not very happy about it. The international court, South Africa is the country which took the case of Netanyahu in the international court for his atrocity, genocide, etc. So these countries and India also recognizes, Brazil also recognizes Palestine as a state. So because of all these reasons, they have a convergence of opinion and they want stability. Stabilization force is something where there can be some issue with, for instance, India is not in favor of Pakistan being included if Pakistan is included in that force. But yes, India wants peace in Gaza. India wants Palestine to be an independent state, to be recognized. Two-state solution, essentially. India supports that position. And also in the stabilization force and the development of Gaza. So there is a larger consensus, I can tell you, on the issue of Palestine in the IPSA also.
All right. If I could talk to you about, what is to unfold, Ambassador Trigunath, through day 2, we have the third and final session as well that will be coming up as far as, the proceedings of the G20 summit are concerned, which is all about a fair and just future for all, critical minerals, decent work, artificial intelligence. So you have critical minerals and artificial intelligence there. So, but the framing also includes decent work. So do you feel that this is something that there's a collective concern about in G20, and they might come up with ways to address that, because that's what jobs is what AI is said to be impacting as well. Critical minerals is another subject altogether.
Well, as we have seen, the G20 declaration has given a very significant part out of these 122 paras to the artificial intelligence as well as on the critical minerals. I mean, that is one of the major concern today of the world, because especially in Africa, because there is a new colonialism of the critical minerals that is following. There is a real race for the critical minerals by all the superpowers, whether it is China or United States or any other countries. They are trying to approach that. So how to leverage that? And likewise, same thing applies to the artificial intelligence, data governance, and all those issues. And they have been very clearly identified, and they have been continuing, not from now, but they have been continuing since our presidency in 2023. So most of the issues have been taken on board in this. And I think that this is precisely what Prime Minister will be emphasizing also, and in the third meeting, so this third pillar meeting that we are going to see in this. So I think that they are very, very important questions. But fact remains is that it has to be eventually a global consensus on all these issues. What do you see on the real, platforms and how things are being played out is something very different than compared to what is being talked about or figures in various. Plus, as you know, the G20 declarations are not binding on any country. United States was not in present. It is going to be the chairperson of the next. They have walked out of the Paris Agreement. They don't care a damn about the climate change. So therefore, this is a big focus here on all these things. Now, how it is going to play out is something that we'll have to see.
All right. Professor Rajan Kumar, if I could come to you on that question as well. The third session where Prime Minister Modi will also be making his intervention. Already he's proposed something of an initiative in ensuring that the waste that is created, there is some regeneration of critical minerals from that. It's recirculated, it's brought back into circulation. But the wider subject of critical minerals, decent work and artificial intelligence, what kind of submissions do you think might there be?
Three types of crisis. Let me tell you. First, of course, is the trade tariff, etc., which has been created, which is the US is the prime mover in that, main creator. The second, the different kind of geopolitical conflicts that you see, and third is the technological rivalry and the way the countries are trying to control the technology and the resources related to those technology. So the conflict that we see in today's geopolitics is the technological rivalry between China and United States. China is trying to control the rare earth mineral that it controls, and mining, most 70% of the mining, etc., and also production is controlled by China. And the problem is that if any new country tries to develop that rare earth material, so it is a very time-taking process. Not that it's rare, but it's very time-taking process. It might take 8 to 10 years to develop that mining process. What US is trying to do, that US is trying to control the sophisticated technology, be it the semiconductor chips or advanced technology. So US is not willing to share that technology with any other country, and that's the reason why Trump is behaving the way he's behaving. He is trying to threaten every country on the issue of trade and tariff, because US knows that if I stop supplying microchips, etc., to any other country, so then probably we cannot use computer, etc. They have the advantage. So these countries, I think, the countries of why this cooperation is important, be it artificial intelligence, be it rare earth material, because we need to ensure that the supply chain is not disrupted, be it the supply chain of rare earth material or be it the supply chain of what you call it technology. Related to that is artificial intelligence. I'll come to that later. But for the time being, we'll have to make sure that we have access to these rare earth material and technology, and that's why we are cooperating with a number of countries. In the same forum, G20 forum, India, Canada and Australia, they decided to come together and for the what you call technology partnership. So again, that's a small, mini step, but very important initiative, and we need to cooperate with Europe, we need to cooperate with Taiwan and with other countries so that the basic technology that we need cannot be disrupted. And for that, we need a longer, a kind of bigger and important partnership with several other countries together. And if Europe and India, for instance, or Japan and India come together, they can develop this kind of technology, and we will not be dependent on United States or China for that matter. Coming to the issue of artificial intelligence is very important, and from India's perspective, because it is going to have massive use. We already have started using in different ways, and artificial intelligence is the future of the global technology. But it also depends on supply of semiconductors, so it's a related kind of thing. And semiconductor again then depends on the supply of rare earth material. So it's a very integrated problem that we are facing today, and India needs to develop. India also needs to have its own AI technology. AI, the kind of the ChatGPT, Perplexity, or China has now DeepSeek, etc. So they are also trying to push certain kind of narratives. So India needs to develop that technology really, really fast, and it can do it in cooperation with the countries which are favorable, be it Japan or be it European countries, and that's why closer integration and closer cooperation is necessary from India's perspective.
Certainly, and in terms of how artificial intelligence should be developed, the world has again diverged on that subject as well. Ambassador Anil Trigunath, do you feel that here in the G20, in the absence of the US, you could have some sort of a final say on which way the world should be going where artificial intelligence is concerned? The US, of course, feels that it should be completely unfettered. And I'll come back to that question to you, sir, because we're getting some images again of the latest that is unfolding right now in Johannesburg. We can see the three IBSA leaders together as well again. Some informal discussions taking place between them as well. President Ramaphosa walking a little ahead, and Prime Minister Modi and President Lula having a very intense discussion with a person who I don't recognize. Looks to me a bit like Harrison Ford, but not really. But there you have. This is a grouping that has come together after a long time, 11 years, much needed coming together, reiteration of their collective values and priorities, the IPSA group, India, Brazil and South Africa. This was something that was on the cards for a long time, and the G20 summit in Johannesburg, being hosted by South Africa, has provided an opportunity for these leaders to come together from three different distant continents. One in Asia, of course, that's our Prime Minister Modi. One in Africa, it's southern tip, South Africa, in the form of President Ramaphosa, and the other, Brazil, one of the largest nations in the world, with the vital Amazon rainforest as well, important for the world's future in terms of ensuring that the world develops sustainably. We have President Lula in the mix too. Ambassador Tiganath, again we are back to seeing how these leaders have taken a lot of time to come together after a long gap.
Well,
yes.
Just as Professor was explaining, I would like to say that collaboration is very important in the new technologies. And during this visit of Prime Minister, we had seen that how India, Canada, and Australia signed this technology and innovation partnership. Likewise, in the Quad also, India very much leads those critical minerals and critical technologies initiatives which are there. And hopefully, we'll have the Quad summit next year, early next year. So that India is continuing to focus both on its chip mission as well as investing a tremendous amount of money rather late in the day, but for the R&D and excellence. As far as this grouping is concerned, this is an important grouping. But what was happening earlier is we were watching that the leaders have been meeting one another, but not in this grouping format per se. And there was a small fund, but now I believe that they have decided to increase it. Secondly, Brazil has just finished its COP30 presidency, and that would also must have figured in their discussions, some of which pointers we have seen have been also re-emphasized in the G20 declaration. So yes, it is an important trilateral and must be carried forward. There is always a scope of identifying and synergizing your approaches, especially the three important countries' approaches going forward into several other multilateral institutions.
And at the same time also address global issues as well. We've been talking about that, Ambassador Tiganath, too, from Ukraine to Gaza to, of course, climate again is one issue, and the fact that these three nations have also felt the tariff tirade of Donald Trump as well taking a toll as far as their trade is concerned. And do you feel that this is something that we would have had a lot of discussions about perhaps where these leaders are concerned?
Yes, I mean, if you come to think of it, when Prime Minister Modi had gone to Tianjin, and at that time, the picture between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin as well as President Xi Jinping, that was quite a good messaging, and that also people talked about RIC revival and all the India-China trilateral, which we call as Primakov triangle, now revival of that. So that conveyed a good message that India does have an option. Now, as I mentioned, that these three countries, India, South Africa, and Brazil, have been facing the wrath of President Trump for obvious, very silly reasons. But we are on the receiving end, all three of them. So obviously, these issues, which are extraneous and totally, I would say, unfounded and very biased, highly biased decisions on the part of the United States would have formed the core of the discussions, frankly. How to strategize against these kind of unilateral measures would have definitely been taken up by the three countries.
Well, let's hope that we hear about what's transpired very soon from the official channels as well. Get a readout on that critical meeting that is taking place after a long gap. On that note, I have to thank you for the moment, Ambassador Tugidayat, as well as Professor Rajan Kumar, for joining us through this special broadcast on the G20 summit that is still taking place in Johannesburg. We are, of course, waiting for Day 2's proceedings to begin, where the third and final session will take place, where Prime Minister Modi will be making his intervention, and we'll keep reporting on that for you. For the moment, that's it from me, and keep watching DD India for all the latest.